When I was a little kid, my mom would make school lunches for me and my brother. And she made sure that we both got more American lunches. I got chicken nuggets instead of rice with seaweed soup, carrot sticks instead of banchan. Even though I wanted a regular Korean toshirak, I had to settle for a ham sandwich. And when I asked my mom if she could make me a regular Korean lunch, she responded with, "Won't kids make fun of you?" And that's the question that I keep coming back to over and over again. This question of, why would someone think my food is gross? So to get me started on answering that question, I went back and I talked to my mom.
그때에서 왜 한국 음식 안 만들었어?
냄새 날까봐. 코리안들은 it's okay지만 코리안 아닌 사람들은 그 냄새 싫어한다고 엄마가 다른 사람들한테 들었기 때문에 코리안 푸드 안 사줬지. 김치 볶음밥 it's okay, but 뭐 메루치 장조림 뭐 엄마가 아기 때 너네 주고 싶은 거는 혹시 냄새 나서 저기 들이 너 싫어할까봐 안 해줬지. 왜냐하면 코리안 푸드는 이렇게 저기 미국같이 이렇게 간장이 들어가잖아. 그러면 밥하고 섞이면 이게 까맣게 보이잖아. 다른 사람들이 보면 그게 그렇게 디스커스팅하대.
그거는 어떻게
들었지. 엄마 그 다른 엄마들이 그렇게 해가지고 이제 뭐 콩자반 이렇게 해가지고 이제 도시락을 싸서 보냈대. 킹더가든 뭐 프리스쿨 때. 색깔이 소이 소스니까 까맣게 보이잖아 이렇게. 그러면 헬로들이 막 그거 갖고 너무 뭐라고 놀렸대. 그래서 그렇게 절대 싸주지 말라고. 만약에 싸줄 거면 이렇게 쿠킹 오일에 싸가지고서는 알루미늄 포일에 이렇게 싸가지고 해야지. 이렇게 섞이고 그러면 외국 애들이 기절한다고 뭐 그런 얘기를 들었기 때문에 엄마는 혹시 너네한테 그런 something 할까봐 안 보냈지. 그게 그렇대. 그래가지고 애들이 막 놀리고 막 이래가지고 애들이 헐트 당한다고 그렇게 절대 해주지 말라고 그러더라고. 한국에서 미국 급식으로 미국 음식이 많이 나가지. 뭐 햄버거, 뭐 치킨 너겟 이딴 거. 근데 한국 사람들은 그거를 디스커스팅하다고 생각을 안 하지. 당근. 그렇지만
왜 그렇게 해서 당근 안 생각해?
글쎄, 그걸 왜 그렇게 생각할까? 그거를 좋아하나? 좋아해서 그런가? 엄마 갑자기 또 그 생각을 못 해봤네. 그리고 패스트푸드 우리나라에서 그거 먹으면 그렇게 디스커스팅하다고 생각 안 해. 그리고 그거 먹는 거를 막 프라우드하게 생각했지. 요즘에는 모르겠다. 옛날에는. 근데 한국 음식에는 소이 소스가 많이 들어가는데 그게 섞이면 좀 그렇게 보일 수도 있어. 그 김치 냄새하고. 그러니까 한국 엄마들이 그걸 안 보내주는 거지. That's why.
This conversation I've had with my mom is just one of the many events that have brought me to examine the intersections of disgust and food. Not only that, but also the notion of Americanizing food so that it can be accepted by an audience unfamiliar with a certain cuisine. While I have a personal connection to this, I wanted to take a step back and look beyond the individual level to ask the bigger questions. What kind of power does food have other than nourishing the body? How are cuisines perceived to outsiders? And how can cuisines be labeled by the outsiders? Lucy Long actually breaks this down with her theory of culinary tourism. The basis of tourism is a perception of otherness, of something being different than the usual. Food itself can be a destination for tourism, not only a vehicle. It goes like this. Food and cuisine are on a spectrum of familiar and unfamiliar. Quick note, Long actually uses the term exotic, but I'm not going to use that word because it isolates a specific identity and shoves it away into this space of otherness, making that identity unrelatable.
So from there are also the three realms of experience: exotic, which we will understand as unfamiliar, edible, and palatable.
These realms exist on intersecting spectrums with certain cuisines and foods existing on these planes. The level of familiarity, edibility, and palatability is unique to each person because it is based off of personal experience. But these levels are never truly set in stone because Long also states that there are ways for people to change these relationships with foods and cuisines.
For example, let's place kimchi and carrots on the graph. When I was a kid, carrots were my least favorite vegetable. They weren't necessarily unfamiliar because I always saw them in the grocery store, and they would always be incorporated in every other dish I ate. However, with my taste preferences, I tended to avoid them. So for years, carrots stayed in the familiar and unpalatable section. However, as I grew older and learned how to cook carrots in a way that suited my taste, which is lightly dressed in olive oil, heavily seasoned, and oven roasted at 400 degrees for 20 minutes, it shifted towards the palatable section. With kimchi, it has always lied in the familiar and palatable section of this graph. Out of all the side dishes at the dinner table, it was never my go-to. But after my first semester of college, kimchi drew closer to the palatable and familiar sections. My craving for home-cooked Korean food increased because I was away from it for so long. When I got home, the first meal I ate was my grandma's taro soup with a large side of kimchi. The examples are endless, but the point is your relationship with food is in constant flux.
So there are definitely ways for people to change their opinions about food. People can find certain cuisines to be unfamiliar, and from their unfamiliarity, the cuisine is understood as disgusting. But that still doesn't answer my bigger question. Why do people think certain foods are disgusting? What makes this complicated is how these concepts are framed within different cultures. Each culture has their own sense of taste, and that taste can be narrowed down further if you look at cultures from specific regions, religions, and nationalities. During my conversation with my mom, she brought up something worth unpacking. American food in Korea will never be seen as disgusting. But why is that? Mitchell Davis touches on this, that the idea of consuming American food is equivalent to consuming modernity. In his article, Eating Out, Eating American, Davis focuses his idea of America by looking at the dining culture within New York City. Modernity implies a set of ideals in contradistinction to tradition. Despite the current traditional backlash in politics, America is itself a modern concept. It is a place where the forces of capitalism and democracy converge to produce the ambition that fuels the audacity and entitlement that is New York. American food can't be seen as disgusting because the idea of America is so closely attached to the cuisine, which gets even more complicated when the reality is there is no defined standard for American cuisine.
Davis even recognizes this in his article. There have been attempts to formalize an American cuisine, but nothing was ever set. Despite this, the place of America as a wealthy superpower reinforces the idea that to eat American is to eat modernity.
Davis states eating out in a restaurant is a performance of identity, and immigrants use restaurants as a form of assimilation. This is stated over and over again. America is a country built by immigrants. However, the dominating culture and cuisine is Western and European. Despite the presence of many different immigrant cultures in America, someone can still see my Korean lunch as gross, but my chicken nuggets as normal.
To further explore this idea of a modern American cuisine, as well as test the notion of American food as disgusting, I looked to history and found the lobster.
Oh my god!
While iconically representative of the American state Maine, I find lobsters a bit unfamiliar. I've never gone out of my way to splurge on lobster if it appears on a menu. To me, it's always existed in the periphery. But for research purposes, I cooked my very first lobster. It was 1.4 pounds, and I cooked it alive in boiling water. As the story goes, lobster was once seen as a poor man's food. Prisoners were fed lobsters as a form of cruel punishment. This is a myth constantly reiterated when it comes to the lobster. But there isn't any actual piece of historical evidence to validate these claims. No matter, the lobster is an iconic food to look at, especially when talking about the lines between luxury food items and disgust. Until the 19th century, the value of fish and seafood was secondary to the value of beef because of its abundance. In coastal regions like Maine, the worth of the lobster was so low that it was used as fertilizer to grow crops. It wasn't until the early 20th century that the lobster started to surpass its secondary status. This was mostly in part by the demand of the lobster in cities and towns inland. Then once canned lobsters started to hit the shelves, the foodstuff became accessible. However, by offering this canned good, overfishing and overcanning brought the stock of the lobster down, which in turn brought up the price, thus placing the lobster into the status of a luxury food item out of grasp from the average American family. However, now despite the lobster's place as an expensive food, there's still a discrepancy between how fishermen and locals view the lobster with how tourists see it. While most people praise the lobster and happily pay the price to eat the crustacean, others don't see it the same way. In Richard King's book, Lobster, he gathered a quote from Maine local George Hoke. "If them tourists want to come up from Boston and pay them prices, then by Christ, let 'em. Damn fools. Lobsters. Hell, they're big cockroaches. That's what they are. You ain't gonna catch me eating one, even if I could afford the damn thing." Along with this opposing view of the lobster, there's a socio-economic factor bringing Maine residents to have a different perspective. Because of the high price, the lobster is unattainable, even to those who fish it. But on the other side, tourists come to celebrate the lobster in large festivals and support Maine through this tourism because it is an iconic food of the state. Despite having such a high status, when you strip down the lobster to its core, it is a bottom feeder. In order to trap the crustacean, fishermen need to use rotten fish as bait. Take away the veil of luxury, and you're left with the reality. Lobsters are just big bugs, and if you want to eat them, you will most likely have to kill it yourself. Bringing us back to this.
Whoa! Whoa, bad boy! Whoa!
The food that we have now accepted onto our plates have complex histories. There's a greater power dynamic in play that's beyond personal preference and taste when it comes to achieving this acceptance. So how deep does it go? And what does it take to get to this point?
We're starting now. Thank you. Okay, could you please state your name and job title?
Samuel O, restaurant owner.
Okay.
You can
What-
edit this, right?
Huh?
You can edit
I
this.
am gonna edit this, okay.
Thank God.
What's the restaurant that you own?
Okay, it's called Hamhung Restaurant. The name Hamhung is a city in North Korea where my parents came from, close by, came from, that is famous for cold noodles, specializing in North Korean cold noodles. And there's two types, one is Pyongyang style, another one is Hamhung style. Pyongyang is marshland, so they use buckwheat. Hamhung is a rocky mountain region, so they use a lot of potato starch. to make the noodle. How did I came about that? Well, my father started in 1985 because he likes the noodles, of course, and then he thought it would be a good idea for a Korean special ethnic food for Korean people in Koreatown and Los Angeles at that time. And there weren't that many restaurants at the beginning. And we had one of the biggest ones at that time. And we were doing pretty good for so many years. So since 1985, we were in that premises for until 2011. Since 1985, I was in college, and that's when my dad started it. And my dad wanted to retire in 1998. And I was doing chiropractic office at that time for about 15th of a year. And he said he wanted to retire and he wanted me to take over the business because he saw it's better for the family heritage to carry on this restaurant because he always wanted it, his dream restaurant. So I retired doing chiropractic and moved it in.
Can you talk about like the different changes that you've made to the menu so that it be more familiar to like American tastes?
It's always been, well, really didn't change that much menu. So Korean food has passed, I think, 10 to 15 years, dramatically increased interest of other people. Because they want to know what Korea is like, they want to know what their food is like. But I'll tell you, Korean is only food. Korean people, well, let me say this right. Korean food is the only food that does not have to have fried or stir fried or steamed. We marinate most of the vegetables. In fact, we are a peninsula, so we have a lot of seafood. And then on top of that, we eat a lot of vegetable because it's the most cheaper and it's abundant. I had an Ethiopian friend who came over and had Korean food. And I knew this guy all along. And he says, hey, why don't you order a salad? I want some vegetable. I go, wow, all the side dishes are like a salad. You have kimchi, you have soybean sprout that's been, marinated, you have spinach. All these are better than just eating raw vegetable like a sheep or a cow. I'm sure humans are better at making some food rather than just eating the raw items. We're smart enough, so we slightly steam it or saute it, what have you. But we steam it and then we marinate it so it tastes good on our taste bud. We have all kinds of vegetables that you don't have to eat raw bulk. It's like a condensed, but it tastes tastier. So people are accepting that more better because they like the side dish. Side dish is number one because anybody can cook a beef or pork or chicken. But what kind of side dish you get? Will you get a raw vegetable salad with the salt seasoning, or would you have it more handled, cooked, non-cooked, all different ways? But basically Asian food is like based on yin and yang, balance of cold and hot. That's why the vegetables you eat are either chili paste or chili pepper seasoning, because the vegetable by nature is cold, okay? So in order for you to digest the cold item, you need something hot, yang. By having a yang means either use chili pepper or hot mustard or anything that adds the flavor that gives you warmth, that makes a balance. So when you eat one item, it balances the whole digestive system. That's the nature of the naengmyeon, and that's the nature of any food that we eat.